Thanks for joining us for the Executive Series. Today I'm speaking with Lazarus Karasavvidis, who is the Executive Chairman of Wattle Health. Lazarus, it's great to talk to you. Now, for people who aren't familiar with the organisation, obviously you're operating in the dairy space. Give us an overview of the organisation.
So Wattle Health Australia is a organisation that specialises in health and wellness products with a specific concentration in the nutritional dairy space. As an organisation, we were listed on March 2017 and have been in the share market for approximately 16 months now, and starting to grow both our infrastructure base in terms of our vertical integration and supply, and starting to build brand awareness throughout our product range in a global landscape.
Right, so there are a lot of elements to this, but probably the most important one is that establishment or consolidation of the vertical supply chain, which gets the cup of milk, as you say, from the farm to the table. And your focus on owning that supply chain is a really important part of distinguishing your organisation from others, for example.
Most definitely. As we know today, provenance of product is quite important to all consumers, not only in Australia but from a global perspective. And for us to be able to control our vertical integration, and as you say, paddock to the plate or cow to the cup, depending which metaphor you're wanting to use, it's important in our mindset and also our consumers' mindset that we know where our products come from, we know where our ingredients come from. So in today's day and age where provenance is so important and authenticity of product is so important, as there are copy products out there, really actually understanding and controlling that vertical integration to be able to actually deliver a guarantee of supply, but also consistency of supply and quality of supply, and knowing where it comes from is so important to our consumers.
Right, so within that, you have a very important agreement with the organic dairy farmers of Australia, who are Australia's oldest co-op when it comes to dairy farmers, or organic dairy farmers.
Correct.
Tell us about the importance of this relationship.
Most definitely. So the Organic Dairy Farmers of Australia, as you rightly pointed out, a true organic cooperative, so in all the essence of the word. So the farmers actually own the co-op, and there's circa 35 farmers currently representing about 35 million litres of current pool of milk. It's important to note that the Organic Dairy Farmers has been around for approximately 17 years.
Which doesn't sound that long, but in the context of this evolution of organic foods, it's kind of like at the inception, isn't it?
That's correct. So they're the what I call the founding fathers of the organic milk industry, in particular in Australia. And what's quite important is they're not only looking after really the backbone of Australia, which is the farming community, but also looking after us consumers in terms of the way that they look after their cows and the sustainable farming practices that they undertake, and really building what I call trust for the consumer in having sustainable organic products that they produce on their farms.
So when you talk about sustainability, you're talking about the absence of fertilisers, the absence of antibiotics, the absence of any other sort of chemical components of the process which might necessarily feature strongly in non-organic products.
That's correct. When we look at sustainable farming practices, it's not only actually looking at how do we do the right thing by the earth and the soil that we're farming. Ultimately, cows are eating grass, and I'm sure you can appreciate when there's no fertilisers and pesticides and what have you not on the grass that the cows are actually eating, and they're not being pumped with antibiotics and grain, which is a natural thing that they eat. The actual not only quality of the milk, but the purity of the milk is quite different from a conventional milk farming practice. So they actually practice sustainable farming practices in looking after the earth and looking after the animals, and in turn we all share the benefits of having good quality organic fresh milk.
Indeed. So that's the supply side of things. You've got that tied up with a strong relationship. Now you're in the process of constructing a drying facility as a result of the capital raising. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, so important to note, milk ordinarily has an 18-day shelf life process from when it's been pasteurised. Once you turn milk into powder, it actually gives it a 2-year shelf life process. So we embarked on a mission. We signed a heads of agreement with the organic dairy farmers in July 2017 to work through the working machinations of what's required to get up a dedicated organic spray dryer, which is Australia's first. There is no dedicated organic spray dryers in Australia.
And that's important, isn't it? Because that's wholly going to be used for organic product, which means that economies get introduced into that because it's not being switched between organic and non-organic product. That's
correct. So economies of scale are there. The cost prohibitance of going down a conventional pathway with big spray dryers is no longer there because we're building a dedicated 1.5 metric tonne spray dryer, 1.5 metric tonne per hour. What's important to also note is this particular transaction is transformational in a number of ways because it actually secures the supply, but more so it gives a pathway for our organic dairy farmers to actually go off and recruit more milk, and gives them a pathway to turn this beautiful fresh milk that they're producing on their farms into organic powder, an Australian organic powder. And currently, from a global perspective, there doesn't exist Australian organic powder out there, not only for infants, but for children and adults and mature adults alike. So the beauty of this particular transaction allows us to have equity ownership in a spray dryer that's dedicated to taking that fresh milk and turning it into powder, but also gives us control of circa in excess of 75% of Australia's fresh organic milk through this relationship.
So that's the processing side of things. In the end market side, you've been working very hard to establish a market presence in China and Vietnam, amongst other countries particularly. Tell us about that.
Most definitely. So first and foremost for us, the most important market is our homegrown market, which is Australia. Building obviously a brand within Australia gives us a certain amount of brand trust. The consumers overseas, and in particular China, India and Vietnam, as you've explained, it's important for them to be able to see our product in the local market. So they know that Australian mums and dads and children, it's not a Me Too brand or an OEM brand or something that we've just put a sticker on. It's actually a genuine brand that's actually selling within both pharmacies and supermarkets, which our product does, both within the Metcash stores, so the IGAs, the Foodlands, the Foodworks, the Priceline stores through API, some dedicated specialty stores, and obviously the JR Duty Free Group. So it's been important for us to actually establish what I call initial entry points for distribution of our brand, and then to move forth into the overseas markets. And one thing that's been important for us to secure is not only online sales and start to go down that pathway, but more importantly, to actually be in the bricks and mortar shops, to actually be in general trade. In particular in China, we're in the Ayingdao mum and baby stores, we're in the China duty free stores, and there's other dedicated specialty stores that we're within. As well as within the Indian market, we've started to sell our baby food in that space. So as time goes on, and our strategy starts to get implemented from our sales strategy of actually being able to have quality ingredients that go into a quality product that's all manufactured in Australia, that starts to move towards an export piece and start to attack the markets that you've mentioned.
Indeed. So from an investor vantage point, you've spent the last year effectively working on every part of that supply chain very intensively, CapEx in relation to the construction of facilities and that sort of thing. When's the tipping point going to arrive in terms of earnings?
So a very good question. I think the best way to look at it over the last 12 months, as you said quite rightly so, we've been building the infrastructure, we've been building the vertical integration, we've been building what I call the supply chain to be able to have something genuine and unique with distinct advantage, to be able to sell and build trust and consumer confidence in our product range by actually owning in some form of equity across our actual vertical integration from end to end. So for us now, it's a point of we're in the process of completing. Obviously, we've just finished the cap raise, which was a success, and now starting to turn soil and start to build the spray dryer there. We also purchased, with our partners, 80% of Australia's largest packing facility, which is Blend and Pack. And now obviously with our partners again, obviously securing this spray dryer has been what I call the jewel in the crown in being able to fill out that infrastructure play. And importantly for us now, it's starting to build on the sales play that you've spoken about. So in terms of a revenue perspective, we believe over the next 12 to 18 months, quite critical times for us to start to deliver on all this infrastructure that we've been building. You'll see some of the deals that are public knowledge that we've made announcements on. For example, the ISDC deal, which is a 100 million turnover over the next 3.5 years in the China market post CFDA registration, which isn't particularly focused just within the infant formula space. We also have relationships within the Indian market that are expanding, as well as the Vietnamese market, and also as importantly within the Australian landscape. Indeed. So for us, it's quite important over the next 12 to 18 months. Our target, circa 5 years from now, is to be looking at a turnover of approximately 250 million in terms of gross sales, and we're building towards that.
Lazarus, it's been great talking to you today, and we look forward to speaking to you more over the course of coming years as you move down the path of becoming a substantial contributor to the space. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much for your time, and we appreciate seeing you.
And thanks for joining us for the Executive Series.
Thank you.